The staff entrance was on the side of the building, not the front, not the automatic glass doors that open onto the main lobby of Meridian Medical Center in Miami, where the marble floors reflected the overhead light, and the reception desk was staffed by 3 people in matching uniforms, and the chairs in the waiting area were the kind of chairs that communicated, through their design and their arrangement and the quality of the magazines on the low tables between them, that this was a place where serious things happened and serious people came to have them handled. The staff entrance was on the side, a gray door, metal, with a keypad and a small camera above it, and a sign that said authorized personnel only in letters that had been printed on a sticker and applied slightly crooked, which was a kind of detail that no one noticed except people who were paying attention to everything. Dr. Simone Abara was paying attention to everything. She was 43 years old, dark brown skin, natural hair pulled back in a low bun. The particular posture of someone who had learned to take up exactly the space she needed, and not 1 inch more in rooms that were not always sure what to do with her. She was wearing a blazer over scrubs. She had a 7 o'clock surgery. She had come straight from the parking garage. She was moving quickly, and she had her badge clipped to her lapel and her coffee in her left hand and her phone in her right. And she was walking toward the main entrance because the main entrance was a direct route to the elevator bank, and the elevator bank was a direct route to the surgical floor, and she had 17 minutes before she needed to be scrubbing in. The man stepped into her path at the bottom of the main entrance steps. He was security, a guard mid-50s, heavy-set, in the uniform of the private security firm that contracted with Meridian Medical. He had a face that had probably been pleasant once and had since settled into the particular expression of someone who has spent a long time in a role that gives him small amounts of authority and has come to rely on those small amounts. Staff entrance is on the side, he said. He said the way people say things they have said many times, without looking at her directly, as if the statement were self-evident and the person receiving it were merely an obstacle to be redirected. Dr. Abara stopped. She looked at him. She had her badge. It was clipped to her lapel, where badges are clipped, where it had been clipped every working day for 11 years. The badge said, in clear letters above her photograph, Dr. Simone Abara, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. I'm aware of where the staff entrance is, she said. I'm also aware that attending physicians use the main entrance. My badge is policy, he said. He made a gesture with his hand, the gesture that means, that way, staff entrance is on the side. 2 people coming up the steps behind her had stopped to watch. A couple, the man in a suit, the woman in the kind of clothing that communicated private patient rather than emergency, both looking at the exchange with expressions of people who are deciding what they're seeing. Dr. Abara looked at the security guard. She looked at her watch. She had 16 minutes. My name is Dr. Simone Abara, she said, with the precise, controlled calm of someone who has made a decision about how to handle this and is executing it. I am the Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at this hospital. I have a patient on the table in 16 minutes. I am going to walk through this entrance. She walked through the entrance. The security guard said something behind her. She did not stop. She crossed the lobby. She took the elevator to the surgical floor. She scrubbed in with 14 minutes to spare. She performed a 7-hour surgery. The patient, a 58-year-old black man named Gerald Washington, a retired schoolteacher from Liberty City, who had been on the cardiac surgery waiting list for 4 months and who had been told by 2 other surgeons that his case was too complicated, survived. After the surgery, in the scrub room, her resident, a young black woman named Dr. Keziose, 29 years old, in her 2nd year of cardiothoracic residency, looked at her and said, "What happened at the entrance this morning?" "I heard something. Nothing that matters right now." Dr. Abara said, "How did you feel about the 3rd hour?" The adhesions were unusual. Kezia looked at her for a moment. Then she answered the question about the adhesions. They talked about the surgery for 20 minutes. Then Dr. Abara went to find the director of security. If this story moves your heart, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop in the comments what city you're watching from. This is Black People Stories, and this is Dr. Abara's story. Simone Abara had known she was going to be a surgeon since she was 11 years old. Not a doctor, a surgeon specifically. She had made this distinction clearly and early, to the occasional confusion of adults who assumed that 11-year-olds who said they wanted to be doctors meant it the way children mean things, loosely as a category, as a placeholder for a more specific ambition that would arrive later. Simone had meant it specifically. She had grown up in Overtown, Miami, the daughter of Nigerian immigrants. Her father, Dr. Simone Abara, a cardiologist who had come to Miami from Lagos in 1975 with a medical degree and the kind of determination that does not ask permission. Her mother, Chidinma, a mathematician who had given up a faculty position in Nigeria to follow her husband and had spent 20 years teaching high school math in Miami-Dade County and producing, in the students who passed through her classroom, the understanding that mathematics was not a subject but a way of seeing. Simone had grown up between two forms of precision, her father's precision with the body, her mother's precision with numbers, and had understood at 11 that surgery was a place where those two things met, where the mathematics of anatomy and physiology became something you did with your hands, where the distance between knowing and doing was the smallest it ever got. She had gone to the University of Miami on a full scholarship, then to Johns Hopkins for medical school, then to Columbia for her residency in cardiothoracic surgery, which was the most competitive surgical residency in the country, and into which she had been accepted on the first application, which her mother had framed and hung in the kitchen in Overtown next to Simone's undergraduate degree and her father's original medical license from Nigeria. She had come back to Miami 11 years ago, not because it was the obvious choice. She had offers from hospitals in New York and Boston and Houston that were, on paper, more prestigious than Meridian Medical Center. She had come back because Meridian Medical served Liberty City and Overtown and Little Haiti and the other Miami neighborhoods where the patients were black and brown and working class, and where the quality of cardiac surgery had been, for too long, a function of zip code rather than need. She had come back because her father's patients had come from those neighborhoods and his father's patients before him. And she had decided at 11 years old that she was going to be a surgeon, and she had decided at 22 that she was going to be a surgeon in Miami, and she had not changed either decision since. She had been chief of cardiothoracic surgery for 3 years. She had, in those 3 years, built a department that had the best outcomes in the state for complex cardiac cases and a residency program that was producing surgeons who looked like the patients they served. She had done this the way she did everything. Precisely, without drama, by being better at the work than the obstacles placed in front of her. The obstacle at the main entrance on a Tuesday morning was not the first one. It was not even the most significant one, but it was the one that happened on a day when Gerald Washington was on her table, and Gerald Washington was the reason she had come back to Miami, and she was not going to let it pass without consequence. The director of security at Meridian Medical Center was a black man named Raymond Cole. He was 52 years old, broad-shouldered, with the close-cropped gray hair of someone who had stopped fighting what time was doing and decided to let it happen with dignity. He had been in hospital security management for over 20 years, and he ran a tight, professional operation, and he did not, in 20 years, recall receiving a complaint from the chief of cardiothoracic surgery before today. Dr. Abara sat across from him in his office on the ground floor and described what had happened that morning. She described it factually. No embellishment, no heat. She gave him the time, the location, the words that were said, the outcome. She described it the way she would describe a surgical complication in a case report. Precisely, with the relevant details in the correct order, without editorializing. Raymond Cole listened. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "I know which guard," he said. "This is not the first incident." "I assumed not," Dr. Abara said. "What would you like to happen?" She had thought about this. "I want a documented incident report. I want it reviewed by the hospital's chief operating officer and by legal. I want the guard retrained, not terminated, retrained. Because termination without addressing the underlying issue doesn't fix the underlying issue." She paused. "And I want a review of how the contract with the security firm specifies protocols for staff identification. Because the protocol as it was applied this morning is wrong." Raymond Cole wrote all of this down. "I'll have the incident report to you by end of day," he said. "Thank you," she said. She stood up. "Raymond," she said, and then stopped. He looked at her. "The patient this morning," she said. "Gerald Washington, retired teacher, Liberty City, for months on the waiting list." She paused. "He made it through I thought you should know. Raymond Cole looked at her. Thank you for telling me, he said. She walked out. The incident report was on her desk at 4:30. It was thorough. Raymond Cole ran a tight operation, and this was evident in the documentation, which was specific and factual and included the guard's prior incident history, which was not nothing. Dr. Abara read it carefully. She sent to the COO with a cover note that was 3 sentences long and said exactly what needed to be said. The COO, a black woman named Patricia Hall, 56 years old, who had been running the operational side of Meridian Medical for 8 years with the particular efficiency of someone who had learned to solve problems before they became crises, called Dr. Abara that evening. I read the report, Patricia said. And your note. Good, Dr. Abara said. I want to talk about the protocol review. I think you're right that the issue is systemic and not individual. A pause. I also want to talk about something else. The security firm's contract is up for renewal in 4 months. I've been looking at alternatives. What kind of alternatives? There's a black-owned security firm in Miami, Sentinel Group, that has contract with 2 other hospital systems in Florida. Their protocols are more detailed than what we currently have. Their training standards are higher. Patricia paused. I've been meaning to bring it up. This seems like the moment. Dr. Abara was quiet for a moment. Send me what you have on them, she said. I'll review it. I thought you might say that, Patricia said, and Simone could hear in her voice the particular warmth of 2 black women in positions of authority in the same institution, finding each other in the space between a problem and its solution. Dr. Kezia Osei came to Dr. Abara's office on Thursday. She knocked on the open door and waited. She had learned, in 2 years of residency, that Dr. Abara's open door did not mean walk-in. It meant, I am available if you need me, but knock. Come in, Dr. Abara said, without looking up from what she was reading. Kezia came in. She sat in the chair across from the desk. She was 29 years old, and she was, Dr. Abara had determined in 2 years of working with her, the most talented surgical resident she had trained, not the most technically gifted. Technical gifts could be taught, and Kezia's technique, though good, was not the thing that distinguished her. What distinguished her was the way she thought, the way she moved between the technical and the human, between what the surgery required and what the patient needed, without losing track of either. I looked up Gerald Washington, Kezia said. Dr. Abara looked up from what she was reading. He was my 4th grade teacher, Kezia said, at Phyllis Wheatley Elementary in Liberty City. Dr. Abara was quiet. I didn't know until I looked up his record yesterday, Kezia said. I didn't recognize him on the table. It had been 20 years. She paused. He used to keep a bowl of hard candy on his desk. Butterscotch. He said sugar helped the brain work. She looked at her hands. He's the reason I like school. He's the reason I thought that someone like me could actually do something like this. Dr. Abara looked at her resident. Does he know you were in that or? She said. No, Kezia said. Would you like to tell him? Kezia was quiet for a moment. Is that appropriate? He's in recovery on the 4th floor, Dr. Abara said. You operated on the man who taught you that someone like you could do something like this. I think you will want to know. She paused. I think you want to tell him. Kezia looked at her. Yes, she said. Go this afternoon, Dr. Abara said. I'll come with you. Gerald Washington was sitting up in his hospital bed when they came in. He was 58 years old, dark brown skin, the face of someone who had spent 30 years in elementary school classrooms and had developed, as a result, an expression of permanent warm attention, the expression of someone who is always, slightly, looking for what a person needs and thinking about how to provide it. He looked at Dr. Abara first. You're the one who fixed me, he said. I am, she said. My wife told me. He looked at Kezia. He looked at her for a moment. His expression changed. Kezia Osei, he said. Kezia's jaw tightened. Mr. Washington. Lord, he said quietly. He looked at her, at the white coat, the hospital badge, the woman she had become. Lord, Lord, Lord. He shook his head slowly. You were 7 years old. You used to sit in the front row, and you used to ask questions until I ran out of answers. You never ran out, Kezia said. Her voice was careful. "You always found another one." He laughed. A real laugh, warm and surprised, the laugh of a man who has just been given something he didn't know he needed. Then he looked at Dr. Abara. "She was always going to be something," he said. "I knew it from the first week." "I know," Dr. Abara said. "I've known it for 2 years." Gerald Washington looked at the two of them, the surgeon who had fixed his heart and the student he had taught who had become the surgeon's resident, and his expression was the expression of someone watching a line continue that they had drawn a long time ago in a classroom in Liberty City with a bowl of butterscotch candy on their desk. "Thank you," he said. He said it to both of them, equally. "Thank you," Dr. Abara said, "for what you built in that classroom." If you're loving this story, subscribe to Black People Stories and comment what city you're watching from. Let's see how far Dr. Abara's story has traveled. The security protocol review took 6 weeks. At the end of it, Meridian Medical Center had a new set of standards for staff identification and a new training module for all security personnel and a renewed contract, not with the previous firm, but with Sentinel Group, the Black-owned security company Patricia Hall had identified, whose protocols were more detailed and whose training standards were higher and whose leadership understood in the specific way that people understand things when they have lived inside the experience. Why the details mattered. The guard who had stopped Dr. Abara at the main entrance completed the retraining. Raymond Cole reported, 3 months later, that there had been no further incidents of the same kind. Dr. Abara noted this. She filed it in the part of her mind that kept track of things that had been fixed, which was adjacent to but separate from the part that kept track of things that still needed fixing. The second part was larger, as it always was. That was not discouraging. That was just the nature of the work. There was a photograph on the wall of Dr. Abara's office. It was not large, a standard print in a simple frame, hung at eye level beside the window that looked out toward the Miami skyline. It showed a room, a classroom, clearly, with small desks and a chalkboard, and the accumulated visual texture of a place where children learn things. At the front of the room, a young woman in a white coat stood beside a teacher's desk, speaking to a group of students who were looking at her with the focused attention of people hearing something they want to understand. The young woman in the photograph was Kezia Osei. The photograph had been taken 3 months after Gerald Washington was discharged from Meridian Medical, when Kezia had gone to Phyllis Wheatley Elementary, Gerald Washington's former school, where he had arranged a visit before he retired, to talk to a group of 4th graders about what surgeons did. Dr. Abara had framed it and put it on her wall, because it was the clearest image she had of what the work was actually for. Not the surgery, though the surgery mattered. Not the outcomes data, though the outcomes data mattered. Not the protocol review or the contract change or the incident report on the COO's desk. The 4th graders in that photograph, looking at Kezia Osei in a white coat, hearing for the first time that someone who looked like them could do something like this. That was what it was for. That was what it had always been for. Dr. Abara had known it since she was 11 years old, sitting in her father's car outside a hospital in Overtown, watching him walk to the entrance in his white coat, watching the way people looked at him as he passed. Not with the expression she had seen at the main entrance on a Tuesday morning, but with the expression of people who understood that the person walking past them was capable of something they needed. She had wanted that, not the status of it, the usefulness of it, the specific, concrete usefulness of being the person who could fix what was broken in the most literal possible sense. She had built it. In Miami, in the hospital that served the neighborhoods she had grown up knowing, with a residency program that was producing surgeons who looked like the patients they served, with a resident named Kezia Osei who had been taught by a man named Gerald Washington that someone like her could do something like this, and who was now teaching a classroom of 4th graders the same thing. The line continued. That was the whole point. That was always the whole point. And next week, we will tell another story about a family that lost everything in a single night, and a decision one woman made at dawn that changed all of it. Don't miss it. This has been Black People Stories. Subscribe, share, and remember, the person they send to the side entrance is often the one holding the room together. Walk through the front door. Every time. You earned it.